disasters may occur anywhere and at any time. They come with no prior notice and at many a time totally unexpected. The magnitude may be small or huge. A disaster may be a fire in a building creating much of loss, or a tsunami taking a huge toll of life and property. Whatever the disaster be, whether it causes loss or not, small scale or large scale, man-made or natural, one shall see personnel immediately in the scene, thriving hard to save people and bring the situation under control. A few of such personnel are firemen, armed forces, reserved police forces, local body workers, police personnel, medical staff, etc. They make themselves present at the emergency in no time, putting their best efforts to safeguard people to the maximum. As social workers, it is greatly important for us to understand the role of such personnel to put them to maximum utility, thus mitigating the risks. In this lesson, we will learn about the administrative structure and constitution of Fire Service Department in India, their roles and responsibilities, activities they perform during disaster situations, the working deficiencies in the department and the efforts that can be put to reduce the deficiencies. Objectives. At the end of this lesson, the learner will get to know the structural constitution of Fire Department in India, the general roles and responsibilities of firemen, the activities they perform during disasters, and deficiencies in the department and efforts that can be put to reduce such pitfalls. The Fire Department, also referred to as the Fire Brigade or Fire and Rescue Service, is a public or private organization providing firefighting services to a defined geographic area, which usually happens to be a municipality or a corporation. The Fire Department is a chief constituent of the emergency management force. As far as India is concerned, the Fire Department is a state-run body. Different states have different methods of operation. The Fire Department works hand in hand with other departments during emergency situations to bring them under control. Presently, the emergency contact number for fire service is 101. Evolution of fire services in India. The genesis and constitution of fire services in India was greatly influenced by the British. The first regularly operating fire service in India was constituted in Bombay and Calcutta. The first nucleus of fire service took its shape after the Great Bombay Fire in 1803. The Fire Brigade in Calcutta was constituted in 1822 under the Calcutta Police. The Bombay Fire Brigade was set up in 1855, the Madras City Fire Brigade in 1908 and the Delhi Fire Brigade in 1896. The British also set in operation many ancillary fire units in various parts of the country. The present status of fire service in India. At present, fire service falls under the 12th schedule and Article 243W of the Indian Constitution. Presently, firefighting and fire service activities are managed and operated by the corresponding states and union territories. The Government of India constituted the Standing Fire Advisory Council, that is SFAC, under the Ministry of Home Affairs as a means to overcome the shortcomings in the department. This council has representatives from the corresponding state and from the Ministries of Home Affairs, Defence, Road Transport and Highways, and Communication and Information Technology. A few states have fire service operating under municipal corporations. In many, it is under the Home Department, while the others have constituted their own acts pertaining to fire services. Fire and disasters. Disasters and fire are closely related. It is like two sides of the same coin. On one hand, fire is a disaster by itself. The magnitude and intensity of fire may vary, but the loss it results in makes fire a disaster of concern. Fire disasters may take various forms. It may be as small as the ones which merely take toll of life and property, or as large as those which take huge tolls of loss. For instance, a fallen candle may cause fire inside a house. This fire, when immediately attended to, does not cause much of harm, but left unnoticed, it would spread to all the nearby areas, causing heavy losses. These indoor and residential fires are under the control of mankind. On the other hand, consider a fire breakout in a chemical or nuclear plant or a forest fire for that matter. They are certainly not under our control. We shall do the least to prevent them, but can only find ways to escape from the hazard and protect ourselves. On the other hand, a disaster may end up in fire. For example, a fire may break out as a consequence of an earthquake like the one that happened in Fukushima nuclear plant in 2011 following the earthquake that struck in the previous night. Thus, disaster and fire are two intertwined concepts. The firefighter. The prime duty of a firefighter is to respond to any kind of emergency situations safeguard and protect the people, environment, and property from damages of any sort. They work closely with the local community and educate them and make them aware of fire safety and rescue activities. Responsibilities of a firefighter. The following are the roles essayed by firefighters at the ground level: immediacy and safety in responding to emergency and calls for assistance, making oneself present in emergency incidents like fire breakouts, accidents, terrorist activities, floods, and other disasters at the earliest; effective rescuing of people and animals trapped during disasters, providing medical assistance and first aid well in advance before the ambulance or medical personnel arrive, thus minimizing the resultant psychological distress; safeguarding oneself and ensuring the safety of others at all situations; assisting in clearance of debris after the incidents of disasters, and scrutinizing for undealt issues of any kind in the affected community; making oneself adequately familiar with the local topography so as to make it much easier to reach the location of emergency; periodical inspection of firefighting devices like fire engine, hydrants, and water supply in the way of preventing any mishappening at the time of help; taking part in refresher courses and training programs periodically to ensure optimum physical fitness necessary to perform one's duties efficiently at all times and be well trained in the usage of various upgraded devices and tools; creating an awareness and educating the general public regarding fire safety operations through awareness campaigns and mock drills; staying well connected with the local community at all times and all situations. Managerial responsibilities: swiftly evaluating disaster situations and formulating the best course of action, leading and directing the crew to work in line with the action plan formulated, assessing the resources, damages, and needs, and drafting reports of the full incident, allocation, administration of control of budget, equitable allocation and distribution of personnel and resources so as to facilitate the attainment of desired objectives, negotiating and working alongside other agencies serving the same purpose, deciding and setting up fire safety standards for infrastructure, effective and efficient planning and management of resources, ensuring compliance with the state and national regulations and requirements. Skills required by a proficient firefighter. The following are the essential skills that any firefighter should possess so as to render his duties efficiently: physical fitness and endurance, effective communication, integrity and composure, teamwork and collaboration, problem solving and divergent thinking, resilience and confidence, sensibility and patience, adaptability, courage and decisiveness, willing to learn, interest in promotion of community safety. Role of fire service in disaster management. Disasters come in myriad forms. They are totally unexpected and come with no prior notice. The term itself poses a threat. The fire service acts as a linchpin in disaster response activities. They have a broad spectrum of roles to essay. They work alongside the other departments in effectively mitigating hazards. Their prime duty is to save people and animals. The following are some significant roles they play in disaster circumstances: controlling of fires that pose threat to infrastructure, providing primary medical care and first aid, transporting victims to hospitals, carrying out search and rescue operations, working alongside and in coordination with other government departments. The role of fire service is not just limited to firefighting, but they also act as a disaster preventive agency. We shall discuss the roles played by fire service in detail. Disaster prevention and mitigation. Prevention is better than cure. Better preventive strategies can reduce the risks by half. Implementation of effective plans to prevent and mitigate disasters would be of great help in safeguarding the population from potential hazards. The fire service has a significant role to play in this phase. They can educate the community about the potential risks through simulated disaster situations. This activity can be carried out in schools, colleges, and public gatherings. Through this demonstration, the anticipated victims will get to know the ways to reduce potential hazards and to effectively safeguard themselves after the disaster has occurred. The fire department holds the responsibility of setting up fire safety standards to various institutions. These standards shall be framed in a way that the possibility of accidents and hazards of any sort are reduced to the maximum possible extent. Preparedness. Preparedness is wherein the community and task force are well equipped to face the trauma after being warned on the disaster anticipation. It is now not possible to prevent the disaster as the situation would have already gone beyond our control. In this phase, activities shall be devised in such a way that protection from the expected risk is made possible. The fire service can volunteer in warning the community about the expected incidents of the disaster and its escape ways. The fireman shall ensure that all their equipment is readily available so as to jump into immediate action. They shall well in advance plan the route through which they shall reach the affected zone at the earliest. Relief and rescue. The role of fire service is more crucial in this phase. They behold a lot of many responsibilities in this phase. Their prime duty is to rescue trapped victims and moving them to safer places. They are well trained in providing primary medical care to the victims in the absence of medical professionals. They can be of help in first aid and transporting the injured to hospitals. It is immediately after the disaster that the chances of accidental fire breakouts are high. They need to keep an eye on this aspect as well. With the knowledge in swimming and survival skills acquired through training, they can be of great help during cyclones and flooding. They actively participate in collection and distribution of relief supplies too. Recovery operations. Recovery or post-disaster phase is primarily aimed at restoring normalcy and attaining improved health and sanitary conditions. The fire brigade shall assist the local body workers in clearing broken branches of trees and other accumulated debris. They can also be employed in damage assessment after the relief operations are over. Thus, the fire brigade plays a significant role in all the phases of disaster management. Shortcomings of fire department in India. The fire department has numerous roles to play in disaster management. Are there enough firefighters to match the country's population? Are they equipped enough to handle emergencies? Are there proportionate fire stations? Is it possible for the rural population to seek immediate assistance from the department? No. The fire departments of Indian states are not capable enough to handle emergencies as much as they are expected to. What creates such a disparity? How can the issue be resolved? The following are some of the shortcomings in the fire department with respect to disaster management as given by the National Disaster Management Authority. Lack of unified fire departments in some states, poor organizational structure, training and career growth of fire personnel, paving way to lack of job satisfaction and hence poorer performance. Inadvocacy of equipment, their scaling and authorization. Inadequate funding from the nodal agencies and ministries, absence of training institutions, poor infrastructure of fire stations, inefficiency or absence of vulnerability analysis, lack of awareness generation programs and simulations targeting the general public, lack of an umbrella legislation conjoining all the states. The estimated shortage as given by the Standing Fire Advisory Council is as follows: fire station 97.54%, firefighting and rescue vehicles 80.04%, fire personnel 96.28%. In spite of subsequent deliberations made by various agencies regarding the aforesaid shortcomings, no or only very little effort is being put by the authorities. This attitude of negligence has resulted in a lot of avoidable deaths and losses. The fire at AMRI Hospital, Kolkata is one good example. Fire broke out leading to suffocation and death of 90 patients. There was no firefighting equipment in the hospital and the public were also denied access and blocked from entering the hospital as a means of support to the affected victims. The situation is alarming and necessitates immediate attention. The state government shall carry out vulnerability analysis in all the densely populated, important and hazardous locations within the state limits and make available the required equipment and manpower. Active and efficient awareness generation campaigns shall also be organized in a way that the public are made aware of the do's and don'ts that would help protect themselves during disaster circumstances. This shall be of great benefit in effectively handling and tackling challenging situations. Unless there is a conscious and planned effort made by all the states, it would become increasingly difficult to improve the efficiency of the fire department, thus resulting in many unacceptable deaths and huge losses to property. Enactment of Fire Act. Lack of a legislation to guide and regulate the fire department and its activities is a major setback. Each state shall attempt to frame a fire act for thyself, which shall encompass guidelines relating to the setting up of fire safety standards for all major infrastructures, the appointment of a fire officer in educational institutions, parks, stadiums, multi-storied buildings, hospitals, etc. Fire officer shall be held responsible for conducting regular fire drills. It shall be made mandatory for the respective fire station officers to ensure if all the occupancies falling under his jurisdiction have all the necessary and sufficient firefighting equipment, escape ways to be used at the time of any disaster, etc., so as to protect the inhabitants from a hazard of any form. Provisions shall be made for taking legal and penal actions against defaulters. Drafting an efficient and comprehensive action plan. The state shall come up with a highly efficient action plan that would be of best help during emergency. The industries and establishments in urban and rural areas shall be inspected and vulnerability analysis be carried out in all such places. The requirement shall be accounted in accordance with the Standing Fire Advisory Council norms and shortage be identified. This may include the number of fire stations, fire vehicle and personnel efficient enough to jump into immediate action. In accordance with the aforesaid aspects, a proposal needs to be drafted and submitted to the Planning Commission through the Ministry of Home Affairs for approval and allocation. Creating adequate and basic infrastructure and deployment of technology. Creating basic infrastructure is of utmost importance. As stated in the National Policy for Disaster Management, the state government shall take up disaster management as a full-fledged development activity and strive towards the better delivery of the same. New fire stations shall be designed and constituted in par with the norms laid out and be equipped with all the necessary facilities. Scarcity of water is another major issue of concern, for water is a vital requirement in the fire services. This scarcity can be met with through tapping of natural water resources, rainwater harvesting, etc. Water shortage tanks shall be constructed wherever possible, and in those areas where there is no possibility of creating a water source, detachable water tenders may be deployed. Water scarcity, as discussed earlier, is a major problem. This can be overcome through the deployment of modern technologies like the water mist technology, which make use of very little water. Here, water is converted into mist and is used to cut off oxygen supply to the fire, thus putting it off. The process is carried out with minimal usage of water. Another big advantage of this technology is the prevention of collateral damage. The conventional firefighting process ends up in the significant damages to other products as well. Improving the outreach of fire services. In India, only 1/4 of the population stay in urban areas. The larger group lies in the rural and semi-urban backgrounds. Firefighting services prevail only in urban and semi-urban areas. It is nearly impossible for the rural population to access these services when at need. Attempts shall be made to constitute firefighting services at the sub-divisional levels and in the rural habit, so as to immediately attend to the needs of the rural population. If needed, fire posts can be constituted in the most vulnerable gram panchayats as well. On improving the outreach, the fire service shall prove themselves efficient in protecting the vulnerable rural population as well. Coherence with state administrative structure. The administrative structure of fire services shall lay in line with the administrative setup of the state. This shall pave way for effective delegation of duties and better prevention of hazards. The following is the basic administrative structure of Indian states. State headquarters, followed by divisions, followed by districts, districts to larger towns, to municipal corporations, from districts to subdivisions, leading towards smaller towns, municipalities, Nagar Panchayat. From subdivision followed through tehsils and blocks, which are linked to the villages and Gram Panchayat. This structure can be taken as a model for designing the administrative structure of the fire service operations. This administrative setup shall pave way for efficient delegation and performance of duties at different levels, so as to effectively bring any disaster situation under control. A defined set of duties and responsibilities shall be formulated at all the levels for improved functioning. Thus, overcoming these shortcomings would make fire service the most powerful task force in disaster management. Summary: the fire department, also referred to as the fire brigade or fire and rescue service, is a public or private organization providing firefighting services to a defined geographic area, which usually happens to be a municipality or a corporation. Disasters and fire are closely related. It is like two sides of the same coin. On one hand, fire is a disaster by itself. On the other hand, a disaster may end up in fire. Owing to their diversified skills and knowledge of emergency, firefighters prove to be an important task force in disaster management. They are actively involved in all the phases of disaster management cycle. Despite their crucial role, there are several shortcomings in the fire department in India. There is a huge shortage in the fire department pertaining to vehicle, equipment and personnel. Addressing these issues in the right manner can strengthen the department even better.